We're talking about the issue of floods. Are you tired hearing it? Are you tired watching us discuss it? Well, we live it, so we can't be tired of discussing it. We saw the rains on Saturday, and we saw the videos and the comments. Just a little reminder of how it all played out, and we're picking comments, tweets that people posted and videos that they attached to it. Before I show you all the videos, let me just say good morning to our guest, Dr. Clifford Amwako, Senior Lecturer at the Department of Planning at KNUST, research interest in urbanization and flood vulnerability. Good morning to you, sir. If you can hear me, there you are.
Yes.
Thank you. Good. Thank you for joining us.
And good morning to your viewers and listeners.
I am happy that you've actually done research, and one of your areas is flood vulnerability. So you're the appropriate person to have this conversation with. But before we begin, I want us to look at some of the videos that has been shared and the comments that came with it. Here we go. Let's pick this one from myjournline.com. The rains, and sometimes it's unbelievable. You would think that this is not Ghana. Yes, it is. And then we will show you the other videos that other persons posted and the comments that came with it as well. And this largely happened in some parts of Accra and Kaswa. In Kaswa, my colleague Maxwell Agbaba will be bringing us a live update, some of the places that we've seen submerged. He is there this morning, and you'll see the difference in terms of when it rains and where there are no rains. So these are videos shared on social media. Somebody asking, is this Accra? Yeah, the same question. Sometimes when you see it appear on a platform, the first thinking is, no, it's not Ghana. It's not Accra. But yes, it is. It is. And it's happening. We keep talking about it every year. I'll just be asking Dr. Clifford Amwako if it is getting worse, because for me, as a resident, just watching the videos, it feels like it's getting worse. There are more that we're sharing with you. And the comments coming with it. This one says, do we really have leaders in this country? Enough of the NPP and NDC. The youth must rise up for what we want. This is happening in Kaswa, Greater Accra. Kaswa is central, isn't it? So parts of the central region and Greater Accra suffered a lot over the weekend, particularly on Saturday, and that got a lot of people, talking. This one says Accra, more rain than everywhere. Turn brown. Yeah. It's really sad, isn't it? So, Dr. Amwako, I'm sure you've seen some of these videos, and I don't know if you also asked yourself, oh, is this Accra? Is this Ghana? Or because of what you do, you already knew that we will come to this point?
Yes, thank you very much. As you have already said, it's getting worse. But I'm not surprised, because this thing has been on since the 1930s. There are geophysical characteristics of Accra that makes it susceptible to flooding. Largely, the area is very, very low lying, and therefore one should always expect some amount of flooding whenever it rains for a longer period. However, it has become a bit intense because of other factors which are related to the planning processes and the rapid urbanization of Accra generally. There are engineering issues as well. The drains, many of the drains have actually exceeded their capacity to be able to carry drains or carry water, storm water, to various places. And development has also expanded to cover areas that were supposed to be sensitive in terms of the ecological importance, like wetlands and areas that are supposed to be left alone so that floods can spread without any serious harm to humans and life. But unfortunately, all these places have been developed, and therefore you are expecting that some of these things will happen. And for the past 10 years, it has been intensive and increasing. So I am not very surprised. This is something that if we do not do a few things right, we may have to discuss this yearly.
You know, one of my colleagues, when we're doing the review, Joseph Akable, was sharing how he saw a 1970-something newspaper with then Prime Minister going through areas that had flooded because of rains.
Yeah.
And that's a familiar scenario. We would have the rains, we will have officials go around, and now it looks like it's come down to an issue of money. But I want to ask you, because you're into planning, what have we been doing all these years as we've been visiting the places that get flooded, as we make budgets each year and talk about the issue? How have we been trying to solve it?
Right, thank you very much. We've been trying to solve it with a lot of pomp and pageantry approach, which will only attract political capital and so on, instead of doing the very basic things that will solve the problems, or if not solve the problem, help us to live with it in a more harmonious and smooth way than what we have done. We have rather concentrated on dredging. And I think that dredging the major drains is good, yes. But as long as people continue to develop in areas that they are not supposed to develop without any restriction, without any zoning code, we are likely to come back to square one. So what we have been doing has been mainly engineering, which is usually before the drains or sometimes after the drains or after the rains and flooding, and then a little bit of relief item distribution, both of which are not really helping. There are better ways. If you ask me, I will give you a few other ways. I think.
We will get to that in a bit. Let me also bring into the conversation Dr. Bob Mantia, lecturer and research fellow at the Center for Climate Change and Sustainability Studies at the University of Ghana. Doc, thank you so much for your time. If you can hear me, good morning.
Good morning.
Great.
And, good to be here.
Sure. So we know what is happening in terms of the patterns. The weather patterns also has something to do with climate change. Can you explain the situation with the climate and what we see in terms of the flooding? What's the connection?
Right. Well, once again, thanks for having me. I would want to be very cautious in making any direct attributions to climate change with regards to the floods that we've had and those that we've been having. But then the fact remains that the global climate is changing, which of course has implications for our national climate. We are expected from scientific projections to see more frequent rains. They are going to be more intense. Historical patterns of rains and weather systems are not going to be reliable, as we are witnessing. So that is a reality. And of course, climate change is caused by human actions. The reason I said I want to be hesitant in making direct attributions is, let's granted that climate is changing, granted that we're going to have floods. We've been aware of this for so long, and we've been called to adapt. We've been called to mitigate. So what it means is we need to plan for these situations. We need to do things that would prevent the kind of scenes that we see. So in a nutshell, the floods, the rains yesterday, the rains over the weekend and what we saw, yes, they may have been a part of a changing climatic conditions, but what we see and what you see on your screens now are things that could be avoided. So that is purely human actions and inactions. So there are things that we need to do to prevent these things, and those are the things that we haven't done. And that is why these events have become so predictable. I mean, we have this conversation, and we can have it again next year, next week, for sure. And that's the reality that we face.
So I'm just asking, because the things that you talk about are things that leadership is aware of, those who are supposed to be fixing the problems. Is it that we're not giving them the right information? Like, what is lacking? We're looking for a way out here. Not to blame anybody, but...
Yes, if I understand you right, from a climate change perspective, yes, the science is there, and we connect as much as possible with policymakers, and they are aware of projections and things to expect and things to do. But then the reality is, I think it's a general policy planning and regulatory failures, and that is a typical problem that a lot of our big urban cities or towns are facing, and in particular, Accra. Look, a place like Kasua, which I have heard from different sources, is the fastest growing community in the West African sub-region. If that is true, what it means is it comes with a lot of pressure, a lot of planning pressure. A lot of these things should have happened before the settlement even came there, and it didn't happen. So yes, things that were to have been in place before the environment was built didn't happen. So basically what we do is we make adjustments as we go along, and I think I had the other co-pilots talking about engineering. We engineer the system for convenience sake, and then it fails, and then we go back engineering. So we need engineering, but we also need engineering on the way we think and the way we behave, and that doesn't happen a lot, and that is the reason I said, yes, we're having this conversation. Let's go home and it rains again, yes. And then we're going to be back having it again. And this has been happening for years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let me just go back to Dr. Mwako. And just, picking up on what Dr. Mantial said. Dr. Mwako, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So it looks like, we've got many other areas where we're not doing the gutters, drains, and there is fast development. Okay. So my question is, if we're truly learning something from what we see, then we should be correcting it at least with the new development. But that is also not the case. So how are we doing this? Where are we?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much. As my co-panelist has mentioned, we know, leaders know, and the various institutions are aware that these things will happen. The problem has been that the social and cultural costs of implementing what we know is right has been difficult. If we have to go by planning and planning standards, what it will mean is that we may have to do a few demolition here and there. We have to do forced eviction of some people who live in some ecologically sensitive areas. We may have to replan certain areas and make sure that all prospective developers go through proper permitting processes. The sites are inspected and the safety of the areas around are all ensured before building takes place. And these are seriously, these are the important things we are supposed to do. However, they have this social cost, political cost, a few other costs that are unwritten, which leaders and various professionals in various positions are not ready to pay. And that is actually the problem. So the problem is that if we should follow the law strictly, the tolls on which we'll be stepping will be too many, and nobody wants to risk that. So essentially, that has been the problem. That has been the problem because the plans are sometimes there, the layouts are there, the plot sizes, everything has been laid out, but to continuously monitor prospective developers to make sure that they go through the necessary planning and permitting processes before they build are not done, because the man can be the vice president of some place or can be an institutional head of some place. And so we have to lax the system to allow this social cost to go. And that's exactly the reason why we have not been able to solve the problem in the areas that are affected, and we don't seem to be doing it well in the areas that are yet to be affected.
Dr. Mantiel, can individuals also control what is happening?
Yes, we can. And, you know, now let me talk about the climate change issue. You know, I would always want to be cautious in making direct attributions, but then the reality is the global climate is changing. And what it means is we're going to have more uncertain events like this. Temperatures are going to rise, precipitation is going to increase, and they're going to be more intense. And we need to educate. People need to understand that this is the reality of our times, you know, and there must be conscious processes that would involve the media, for example, in educating people that, look, this is the reality of the time. We need to prepare, and preparing means, you know, taking care, taking personal responsibilities. For instance, building in wetlands and all those things, people should desist from doing that. Choking drains with waste and all other things, you know. So part of, you know, response to climate change is to adapt. We call it adaptation. And adaptation itself is a learned process. So when people don't have awareness and understanding, and then to learn about some of the mechanisms for adaptation, then of course we are going to have these situations. Look, it's troubling to see that even in the middle of these floods, we saw cars moving, trying to go through the floods, thinking they will survive. You know. And if people were aware that these were things that are risky, they are dangerous, they could take their lives, then of course they wouldn't take such risks. The other thing I want to also emphasize is, you know, we tend to put all these things under what we call natural disasters or even disasters, but then the reality is, disasters don't just happen. You know, they are things that our actions and inactions cause disasters. They trigger these rains to cause disasters. So people need to understand that if the rains come and we are prepared, if the floods come and we are prepared, then of course we can live with it because we are prepared. And that is what means we have adaptive capacity. But when we don't have the knowledge, we don't have the awareness, and when we don't even have that personal disposition to take responsibilities, then these are things that they're going to be like it is now and probably forever, unfortunately.
Dr. Amwako, we are in a rather interesting period where we will have leadership come to the people. So it's a good time for them to put a few questions to them. So I'd like to ask you, you know, specialists, if you like, what should we be asking them in terms of the solution? What should we be demanding from them now that we may have some kind of direct access? Dr. Mwako.
Right. Thank you very much. I think we should be demanding for basic things, like, for example, where is the hazard map of Accra? Are we sure we've been able to map all areas in Accra that are prone to flooding? And we have been able to, for example, mount various giant boards of these hazard maps for people to know that these areas are flood prone, and when you live here, you are in danger at any time. So we should be asking for where the hazard maps are. We should also be asking of where the early warning systems are. Do we have a system that is able to warn us early enough? And the various communication channels for giving the early warning systems in all languages to everybody. We should be asking these basic questions. We should be asking questions about evacuation plans. How do we get evacuated? And I'm saying all these things, or I'm asking all these questions because it appears we have come to live, or we are supposed to be living with it now. And therefore, we should be asking, how do we evacuate people from these areas and so on? And when we evacuate them, for example, where are we going? So people should be asking our leaders basic questions for the short term. In the short term, where are these things that will help us to at least live with it? Then in the long term, we should be asking questions about, why are we not increasing the capacities of the drains? Why are we not following planning codes and making sure that prospective builders build at the right places in the right, frameworks? We should be asking questions like this. Why is it that we are not sensitizing our people and making them aware of where they live and how they should behave around this time? In any case, if you ask me, the number of flood days in the entire year will be about between 14 and 18 days. So preparing for 18 days, using the rest of the days of the year, I think should not be a problem. But it appears it is, because these basic questions have not been asked and answered. So we should be looking at these questions from our leaders.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mantea. From your side, anything that you want to empower us with?
Yes, I think Dr. Mwako said it right, but then I think he was very economical in talking about social and cultural costs. The real cost is the political cost. So we need to, and this is the time, we need to get our politicians as they come closer to us to answer these questions. The political costs and the political action needed is people, there must be demolition. People need to move from where they are. Where is that political will? Are they able to do that? So when they come and we ask them those questions and they can look straight into people's eyes and provide the answers, then of course we would also know what to do with them. But yes, political will is the problem with the flooding that we see almost on an annual, predictable basis. The lack of it.
Would we get to a point where we'll see experts like yourself, you belong to different groupings? Can we see you all come together, either to petition or on behalf of the people? Because we don't have the kind of expertise that you have, so that leadership would also appreciate the seriousness of the issue?
Certainly. I don't think petition is the way to go. We work in where we do the things that we do where we are. We do research, we publish, we communicate our research findings to policymakers. And the point about research is to inform policy and decision making. So that is what we do. And I'm sure Dr. Mwako will tell you, we do it almost on a daily basis. We go to meetings, we go to workshops, we tell them what is happening, so they are aware. So it's not a case of petitioning. Maybe what we should do is gather around the flood areas and then say, we told you so, but it's not so much about petitioning. We do it all the time. Our publications and all those things, our policy briefings that we do, they have it. But yes, maybe one of these is we need to gather when these things are happening and say, we've always told you.
Yeah. Dr. Mwako, anything you want to add to what he said?
I think Robert has said all, because that's what we do all the time. In fact, in the last 2 years, we have what they call the Ghana Urban Forum, and I've always come there to do a presentation, and usually the chair and all the big men at the table are people in authority, and they hear this. In fact, I even one day said, we have cheaper ways of solving this problem, like basic things like getting software for early warning systems, building areas that we will call safe haven, and evacuating people, at least to minimize the amount of damage that is done and casualties that we record. And one of the people whose name I will not mention was smiling because I looked like a funny person to him. So it looks like we are not committed, as Robert has said, we are not having the political will to implement the many things that experts and professionals are saying, and that's the problem. Otherwise, we have said it severally, and they are aware. In fact, even this forum you have given us, we are speaking to somebody in authority, and they should be listening. They should be doing some things right.
Yeah. But Dr. Marco, this is not just an Accra problem. It's been raining a lot in the Ashanti region as well.
Yes, yes. In fact, there are many places in the Ashanti region are also suffering the same fate as in Accra. Only the damage is much reduced here, probably because we still have not gotten to the choked position where Accra is. But we will get there very soon if the right things are not done. But it's not only even in Kumasi, the smaller intermediate towns like the Kofodias, the Sunyanes are all having their fair share of flooding. Only it has not gotten to the stage Accra is. And we may get there if we don't really do something very quick.
Yeah, Dr. Mantia, I mean, I want to have a lot of hope. With this, do you see that we're beginning to fix it? Like, are there things, underlining things that give you the impression that we are actually onto solving this issue?
Well, I would want to believe that at least something is being done, some things have been done. But let's look back from June 3rd of 2015, is that right?
Yes.
Yes. And that was monumental, what happened. And you would have thought that that was going to trigger real transformations in the way we plan our urban settlements. And between 2015 and now, I'm sure, I don't have the numbers readily, but I'm sure, and you probably would also be aware that we've seen a lot of these happening, So even if something is being done or something has been done, what is it? Is it sufficient? Is it enough to avert some of the things that we are seeing on a regular basis? So a lot more needs to be done. A lot more needs to be done. And some of these, what needs to be done should be radical in the sense that we need to gather the requisite political will and then take into consideration whether cultural or social costs and do just what is right. Just what is right. And it is that reluctance or inability to do what is right that is what is bringing us here to talk about these things almost on a daily basis, So I wouldn't say nothing has been done. Some things are being done. The engineering side is we all see the dredging going on, but then everything shows that the dredging hasn't solved the problem, and it probably won't. So there are different things that need to be done at the same time, and of course we need to gather that policy commitment and the regulatory will to do all these things, and that is what has not happened, I would say.
Well, gentlemen, we have to leave the conversation here, but I'm happy that you've empowered us enough to at least ask the right questions and so that we know what we are saying. So that when they say, oh, we're desilting, we're dredging, we don't just sit back and be happy with that, because we know that will not solve the problem that we are faced with today. So thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's Dr. Mantiao and Dr. Amwako there helping us with this issue of the flood, something that happens every year. Well, apart from it happening every year, just like Dr. Mantiao said right there, could happen next week, and we'll be back talking about it. But now you are empowered enough when the political leaders appear at your doorsteps, and they have already. Some of them are even doing door to door. You know that we've got big issues that we need them to solve, and you have to put the right questions to them. The time is now. Fortunately, we have bigger access to them. So we're going to cross over, go to our roving man today, Maxwell Agbagba, coming to us. Do we have Maxwell joining us? Okay, we're going to go to our roving man in a bit, but for now, this is where we leave the conversation. We've got other conversations that we will have. We're talking about the Takwa issue. Remember that, where some persons were wounded, slashed, really, if you saw the videos, if we were bold enough to see the videos. Most of us couldn't. It was too gory for us to watch, but what is really happening? We'll have that conversation also coming up next. you.